So in this first tutorial, setup for spherical map texture capture cubic, we took this square face and we converted it into a spherical map, and that's our setup program which I've got here in the background. So this is our scene already set up to accept a texture. And this one, what I'm going to do is actually use a texture rather than this texture, which is not that interesting, and see what the drawbacks are. So here we've got our cubes. If you remember, we've got middle, top and bottom. And what I'm going to do is use a photo. So I've borrowed my dad's camera and got this photograph. It's a fairly good camera, so it's quite a high resolution. And I'm going to clip a bit out of this square image. Now, the choice of my image on my crop is going to be 1000 by 1000 for reasons that will become apparent. So you can see this is quite a large image. Now, don't, if you're doing this with photographs, tend to go for the edges, because there's this vignetting effect with the lenses, which means it'll get slightly darker even if you can't tell just by looking at it. And also I've photographed the inside of my sink. That's my plug hole there. Sorry, it's not very clean. And I've tried to get the grain of the scratches. So you see I have been cleaning it. That's Brillo pad action. That running up and down, because I know that with the mirroring that'll be less obvious on the mirroring effect. So if you aim for whatever textures you capture, if they've got any particular nap to them, to make sure that you've got it running in that direction. So I'll pick somewhere in here, double click, that'll crop it, and that's going to be my cube face. So save copy as cube face. Right, now I need the top and the bottom for this, and as I did before, I'm going to use effects, reflection effects, kaleidoscope, because it's more fiddly to do it in Bryce. Now I just need to know whether this is top or bottom. I can turn off the preview and see what doesn't change. So that's the top section there. So I go OK, file, save copy as, I'll call this one T. Save, and then Control Z back again, effects, reflection effects, kaleidoscope, change this to 45, go OK, file, save copy as, and call this one B. So that's my top and my bottom. And now go back to this setup scene, select the middle, go into the material lab and load in the cube face, which is there. Check out of that. Now select the top, go into the material lab and select T, which is there, okay. Check out of that, and then select the bottom one, go into the material lab and select B, which is there, okay. Right, document setup. Well, if you think about it, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes around the outside, and the face of those is each 1000 pixels long from the photograph. So if I go document setup and set this to, it needs to be 2 to 1, 1000, the top setting will be 4000 by 2000. So switch to the main view from the perspective camera and render. Okay, while that's rendering then, which is going to take, I don't know, a minute or so, I'll launch a new instance of Bryce. Go back here and point out, you see this pixelation at the top where it's stretched by the spherical mapping lens system. That would be less obvious if we'd got pict interpolation on, but because none of these images tile, all I've got to do is accept that this will be compressed and you won't notice this, because otherwise the pict interpolation loops around some of the image of the back edge, and where these seams are between the objects, they'll become obvious because of the wraparound. However, I'm planning in later tutorials to cover more sophisticated approaches to doing this spherical map on a seamless texture, and we won't have this problem, hopefully, because of its extra sophistication. But we'll leave this for now, and I've got my empty Bryce scene. This is going to be the scene I'm going to put an object in to look at this texture that we're making. So I'll bring in an object that I made in Wings 3D. I'll just enlarge it a bit, lift it up, lift the camera up, point the camera down. Right, I'm going to bring in one of Horo's HDRI backdrops. This HDRI image, I particularly like this garage closed image. I'll just bring this up to 8, reduce the specular output, render in scene, lower the quality and provide some light. The sun has been turned off by default. But if I start to use effects in this material, then I might want, say, the sun on, which make it rather too bright, but I can just keep the specular and lose the direct light, or just have a very small amount of direct light, for example. So that's, you know, it's your choice. I'll stick with a bit of direct light, maybe not quite that much. Fiddling now. Okay, so I've got my sun, I've got my HDRI lighting to provide some overall lighting, and at the moment you can see the cube face down there. I'll just move my camera around so we can get a close look at this. So if I was going to put my texture on here, I could, for example, go into the Material Lab, choose the diffuse, go to Object Cubic here, go to the Texture Source Editor, click an empty square, and get my cube face. Okay, apply that to the diffuse channel, and check out and render, and you can say, well, where's the problem here? It seems to be working. However, depending how close you're going to get to your model, you will notice that there are issues where the mapping changes direction. So you can see there's a seam along there. Because I've got this sort of up and down, north south aligned, then it's okay sort of across this direction, but bear in mind it's not a repeating image, so you can see a join there. And then when it runs up and meets the side of the image that's placed on top, you can see a join. So this is where we're going to overcome this problem with the spherical map. So I'm just going to move the sun around a bit from a different side. And to do that, we'll just need to see if our spherical mapped image is done. So yes, save as, it's automatically incremented, so I won't be overwriting my last file. And then I can go into the material for this object, go in here, open a separate square, find where we've saved the spherical map, there it is. Okay, check out of that and make sure we select spherical. Right, and give that a render. So now we've overcome, to a degree, the issue where we have object cubic, where it'll decide that that's one face of the cube and that's the other, or it won't run very well over these edges. Obviously, as I say, because it's reflection based, you get a sort of inversion of the angle where things aren't running exactly true to parallel, which is why I was trying to get them sides pointing up in a certain direction. So at the moment though, this isn't looking very metallic, it's just got the diffuse channel. So I suppose let's have a mess with this and see if we can make it look a bit better. I'm going to reduce the saturation output from the HDRI because these lights are rather blue, and in the Material Lab I'm going to give it some reflection because that'll take advantage of the HDRI backdrop. It'll be reflecting some of those lights. Let's see, give it specular, we can give it anisotropic, so that's now running off the channel here, though it's rather broad, so I'll give it specular halo to narrow that down. Let's see what else can we do. Bump. Now, can run bump off this image. It's not ideal situation. White is height, and so the scratches tend to be bright where they catch the light, so I'll give it -15 bump, put a blob in there to pick up that channel, so that'll affect the specular highlight somewhat. Let's see how that's looking. So that might look a bit more metallic now, a bit bright. And this shadow banding is spoiling the effect somewhat. So let's go the whole hog and produce a bit more sophisticated lighting. So I'll create an obscure light for this. So I'll name it background, that's an important step. With a capital B it has to be. Edit it, set these two values to 0, true ambience optimization, use gel, include only background, go to the procedural, reset to default grey, check out of that, and enlarge it to encompass the entire scene. Now at this point go into the Skylab and image-based lighting, light from inside, don't cast shadows, turn off true ambience optimization, and target the light source we've just created. So we can still use the sun in this setup. We'll see how much light we're generating at the moment because things vary between the render modes. So now we're going to render options, premium effects, true ambience. I'll turn it down to 4 for preview, scatter correction, boost light, and maximum ray depth of 4. Alright, if we've done that right, we'll get some light out of this. So you can see now it's quite dark. So we can have more diffuse from the sun, and we can have some more HDRI effect. I'll try 150 there. See, that's lightened things up nicely, and it should hopefully look quite realistic by the time we've done with this effect. Now it's all a bit grey, so I'll tell you what, we'll have we'll have a tinker with this material. Supposing, right, we can pop 3 blobs in here by holding the Control key down and clicking on C, and I'll go to the basic selection. So basic, I'll get this basic spots in this one, and basic spots in the last one. In the first one, hold the Shift key down, click on the name. Now I've got that. I need to go into the texture source editor, yeah. And I'm going to just modify this so it's got no output. So spots, nothing. And then if I change this filter to sign and lift it right up, that's the channel red. So I want red actually, yeah, red will do. In this basic spots, so go into the texture source editor, change the filter to sign, give it alpha output, get rid of the spots, and I'll reset that and then compress the curve down so it's giving about mid-grey output. So now this is going to mix through the alpha channel these 2 channels, so it's going to mix this red into the diffuse channel. So I've changed the colour of my metal, so it's not even going to look like the sink now. Hopefully it'll look like a nice red colour. So I'll check out of that and give it a quick render. So there you go. That's an interesting red colour now. I'll move the light around and pick it out from another side. So there, I think what I'll do is I'll change the document setup to 1:1 aspect ratio, so it's more fitting for the object, and I'll just narrow the field of view. Because I'm already using premium effects, I could include soft shadows, because if you're looking at something small, then it's not unreasonable to have soft shadows. Don't use too much soft shadows on a landscape. A very large setting will tend to miniaturize your scene because they don't tend to be that soft unless the sun's very low. And that's that setup, and then we'll do render options and set it up to 256 rays per pixel for the highest quality result. So that should work nicely with our high resolution captured converted material. You can see this is going to take a little while. We've got the anisotropic effect working with the specular output of the sun, some direct light from the sun, and it's going to be about 45 minutes to render. So I'll just pause the video here and we'll have a look at it when we're done. Here's the final render then. It's a little bit garish, but hopefully I'll be able to use that to point out a few things about it, because if you've never actually done this process, you might think it's rather a long-winded way to just apply some images to a model, but if you've tried to do it and tried to get seamless textures, you'll realise it's quite a tricky thing to do, so it's a useful thing to be able to do. One thing I should have done, I suppose, is turn the atmosphere off, because I mixed it with the existing Bryce sky and used image-based lighting and add to sky option there. Then it probably wouldn't have picked up so much blue from the sky, but that's by the by. What I'll do is have a look at this in Paint Shop Pro. So trouble areas, if you'd used Object Cubic with non-tiling textures, this corner for example, and this corner here, obvious trouble points as I pointed out before. Other areas, oops, I need to slide this around, is here, where you see this got a slightly stretched appearance from the spherical mapping, but and inside here, but otherwise you would have had a situation with Cubic where it would have had one face here, another face on this sort of side of the inner cut circle, and another face here. So you'd have had a transition zone here which wouldn't match up very well, and here and here. And things like the anisotropic effect, which you can see highlighted around there, would have behaved quite badly when it hit those transition zones, because it shows up even on this texture which was chosen to be quite uniform. So you'd think, oh, no problems. As I showed earlier, you could see the transitional areas even though it's mostly a grey image, and the anisotropic effect would have given the game away, because you would have ended up with a harsh transition in the anisotropic effect because it's running off the same image texture. So that's just a quick explanation of why you would want to go to the trouble of converting your textures in this way. So there you go. I hope that's been interesting, useful, and that you'll give it a go yourself at some point.